Welcome to Biology My Passion. I am Soumya Harikrishna. We are dealing with the chapter Molecular Basis of Inheritance. In the part 1 video, I described the DNA structure and we ended with the bDNA structure by Watson and Crick. They made the studies based on the X-ray diffraction studies by Maurice Wilkins and Rosalind Franklin. Now, but even before that, in 1953 only they proposed their model, but in 1869 itself, Frederick Miescher had found some acidic substance in the nucleus. So he named it as nuclei. So it was just after Mendel had completed his work, if you remember. Then later in 1889, another scientist, Altman, renamed that nuclein as nucleic acid. Even now we are using the term nucleic acid for DNA as well as RNA. Now another important concept that we have to study is the Chargaff's rule proposed by Erwin Chargaff. So let us see the highlights of his rule. Purines and pyrimidines occur in equal amounts. As we discussed previously, the nitrogen bases can be purines or pyrimidines, but their amounts are always equal in a DNA. Because we know once there is a purine, it is base pairing with pyrimidine. So they are equal amount. Phosphate and deoxyribose sugar occur in equal number. A nucleotide has 3 parts. So nitrogen base is avoided, means we have now phosphate groups and deoxyribose sugar. Their number is also equal. Then molar amount of adenine, which is a purine, which base pairs only with thymine. So always adenine comes means opposite thymine. So their molar amount, and cytosine and guanine are always equal. So adenine and cytosine are 2 purines. They base pair with pyrimidines, thymine and cytosine. Their molar amount is equal. Then the base ratio, the total ratio, adenine plus thymine by guanine plus cytosine is specific for a species. It may vary from species to species, but for one species it will be the same. But there can be variation, like in primitive organisms, the ratio is very low. When we come to advanced organisms, the ratio is very high. And finally, all these are applicable to only DNA, because we know that DNA is double-stranded. We can get questions based on this. A DNA segment has a total of 1000 nucleotides in it, out of which 240 are adenine containing nucleotides. How many pyrimidine bases this DNA segment possesses? We know adenine and guanine are the purines, right? Thymine and cytosine are the pyrimidines in DNA, because we know if it is RNA, the thymidine will become uracil. So total adenine plus thymine plus guanine plus cytosine is 1000, right? So we know adenine is 240. Adenine always base pairs with thymine. So whenever there is an adenine, opposite what should come? Thymine. 240 places adenine comes means 240 places thymine is also occurring. So we can say that thymine is also 240. So what is G plus C? So this together, adenine plus thymine will be 480. So G plus C together is 1000 minus A plus T, right? So 1000 minus 480. So how much you will get? 520. So guanine plus cytosine 520. So each one will be to 520 by 2. 260, right? So 240 adenine if there, 240 thymine there, 260 guanine and 260 cytosine. Here their question is how many pyrimidines are there? Which are the pyrimidines here? Thymine and cytosine. So 240 plus 260, 500 is the number of pyrimidines. In the previous question, number of nucleotides was given. This is a slightly different question where percentage is given. Okay, if the base adenine constitute 30% of an isolated DNA fragment, then what is the expected percentage of cytosine in it? Adenine is 30%. So we know that thymine also will be 30%. So adenine plus thymine is equal to 60%. Therefore, guanine plus cytosine will be 100 minus 60. So 40% will be there, guanine plus cytosine. In the question we are asking what is the percentage of cytosine. So cytosine will be half of it. So cytosine is 40 by 2, 20%. Even guanine is also 20%. Let's now learn about packaging of DNA helix. What is the significance of packaging of DNA helix? We can understand only when we realize the length of the DNA. According to the DNA structure we learned, there are base pairs, right? And each base pair is at a distance of 0.34 nanometer. So one base pair has that distance, means the whole DNA, how many base pairs are there? 6.6 like this, we have to see 6.6 into 10 to the power of 9 base pairs, each one with a distance of 0.34 nanometer. So we just have to multiply the individual distance with the total number, right? So 0.34 into 10 raised to 9 into 6.6 into 10 raised to 9. So you can easily calculate this. You will get 2.2 meters. So 2.2 meters means almost this much. So such a long DNA has to be coiled and kept inside a small nucleus. You know, cell itself is invisible to our naked eye. Nucleus is even within the cell. And its size is so small, it is only 10 to the power of minus 6 meters. 10 to the power of minus 6 means what? 1 meter divided by 10 lakhs or 1 million. So, that much small nucleus, within that we have to keep a molecule which is 2.2 meters long. How is it possible? If you pack properly, you can fit that molecule inside the nucleus. There comes the significance of packaging of DNA. In eukaryotes, where do you find DNA? Within the nucleus. But what about prokaryotes? They don't have a nucleus. So you may say it is in the cytoplasm. But are they running around in the cytoplasm? No. In prokaryotes like Escherichia coli, so there is a cytoplasm, no nuclear membrane, well-defined nuclear membrane, and we know DNA is negatively charged. So there are proteins which are positively charged. So the positively charged proteins will be joining with negatively charged DNA and it will hold the DNA in a particular region. So it's not scattered throughout, it is held by positively charged proteins as large loops. This region inside the cytoplasm where we can find the genetic material is called a nucleoid. There is no nucleus but there is nucleoid. Now let us see how is it done within the nucleus in eukaryotes. In eukaryotes, the long DNA has to be tightly coiled and kept inside within the nucleus in the form of chromosome. We know condensed form of DNA is called a chromosome. So again, DNA being negatively charged, for the coiling we need positively charged proteins. So the positively charged proteins present in eukaryotes for the packaging of DNA are called histones. So there are different classes of histone proteins. They are H1, H2A, H2B, H3 and H4. This H1 is slightly distinct from the other type of histones. Now, how are they packed? See, before that, are all proteins positive in nature? No. So, histones are positive in nature because they have two amino acids, basic amino acids like lysines and arginines. So histones are rich in lysines and arginines. They are basic amino acids, so their abundance is giving an overall positive charge to our protein. Now when the DNA is packing, histone proteins except that H1, they will form an octamer. Octa means what? 8. So suppose each one molecule, one H2A, one H2B, one H3 and one H4, they are arranged in one layer, 4 of them. On top of that, again one more of that. That means each type of histone should appear twice. Okay, so 2 H2A, 2 H2B, 2 H3 and 2 H4. should come together. So how many total? 8. So this is called as an octamer, or more precisely histone octamer. So now this is kind of a spherical structure. Over this the DNA will wrap around. So it is, suppose I am just defining it like this, a spherical structure. Okay, over this who is coming? The DNA will come. So it's like this only. Okay, so this is histone octamer. This is our DNA strand. It actually utilizes 200 base pairs long DNA for wrapping around a nucleosome. After a distance, again another nucleosome. So the DNA will be wrapping around. Then comes yet another one. Like that, this process continues. So more and more structures appearing, they are becoming condensed or shorter. So this one unit with the histone octamer with the DNA wrapped around is called a nucleosome. Now just outside this, our H1 is also there for the packaging. For giving the stability to this packaging, H1 histone is also there just outside this octamer. Okay, so histones, 4 histones form a histone octamer, 2 molecules each, and over there the DNA wraps around and thereby reducing the length of the DNA. But this is not enough. Now if you look under the microscope, this will appear like this, a thread, a bead. So this is called a bead on a string structure, or rather we call as chromatin. TIN. TID is different, I will tell that later. Chromatin. Chromatin means what? Bead on a string structure of a DNA along with the proteins. Now it is shorter than the original DNA, right? Now again further coiling will happen. So next type of coiling will occur like a solenoid. You are all familiar with solenoid, right? Next coiling is solenoid coiling. Again after solenoid coiling it is condensing. Then it will go for super solenoid coiling. Okay, that is called a unit fiber. Like that it will condense and coil further to form ultimately a rod shaped chromosome. Like this. Okay, but if it is duplicated chromosome, DNA if undergoes replication before cell division, it will have 2 arms. These 2 arms are called chromatids. So you understood the difference, chromatin and chromatid. Chromatin is DNA with the protein, whereas chromatids are the 2 arms of a single chromosome are called chromatids. And these chromatids are called sister chromatids because they belong to a single chromosome. Now this space, this DNA in between 2 adjacent nucleosome is called a DNA linker because it's linking 2 adjacent nucleosomes. Nucleosome diagram is also important for you. Now I told the further coiling, like in the case of solenoid and super solenoid, for that additional coiling some kind of additional proteins are required. They are called non-histone chromosomal proteins, or they are otherwise called NHC. NHC stands for non-histone chromosomal proteins, which are required for additional coiling of DNA segments. Certain regions of the chromosome or sometimes the entire chromosome may condense more than the other regions. So such condensation or supercoiling is called a heteropyknosis. Okay? So there are certain parts of the chromosome, they show this heteropyknosis or highly condensed structure, or we can say that it is clustered together, okay, or like nodes. That part can be there at any stage of the chromosome during the cell cycle. So such parts are called a heterochromatin. That means they show this heteropyknosis or supercondensation at any stage. It may not be always there, but at any stage. Whereas there are certain regions of the chromatin, they never show the supercoiling or condensation, they are loosely packed. Such region is called a euchromatin. Okay, so you have to study certain differences between heterochromatin and euchromatin. This is an important differentiating question for you. Differentiate between heterochromatin and euchromatin. As I told, it is tightly coiled part, the heterochromatin. So, densely packed region of chromatin is called a heterochromatin. Loosely packed region of chromatin is called a euchromatin. Stains deeply, because if you look under the microscope, certain regions you can see highly stained. Those are the heterochromatin regions, whereas euchromatin stains less. Since it is highly coiled, transcription is difficult. Transcription means we are copying the information from DNA. That becomes difficult, whereas transcriptionally active. We can transcribe it, or later proteins can be made based on the information. Then more labile. Only these 3 points are there in the NCERT textbook, but if you can remember, you can go for these points as well. More labile, that means they are affected by sex, temperature, age, etc. Less labile. Metabolically inert means very few genes. It's not that genes are not present, genes are present, but very few genes are present, many genes are present, so metabolically active. Then crossover frequency is less. You know, crossover during Pachytene stage it happens, whereas crossover frequency is more. Recombination results from crossing over. Now, one more point, that is heterochromatin. I told you heterochromatin shows heteropignosis or condensation at any stage of the cell cycle. Based on that, there are 2 types of heterochromatin: constitutive heterochromatin and facultative heterochromatin. Constitutive means what? Continuous. They show heteropignosis or the condensation or the densely packed structure in all cell types. Whereas facultative heterochromatin shows packaging or condensation only in certain types of cells or only at certain stages of the cell cycle. So, with this we have learned about the introduction of DNA, its structure, packaging, etc. In the next video, we will discuss all the experiments that led to the finding or confirmation that DNA is our genetic material. Hope you enjoyed learning with me. If you like my video, please like, share and subscribe to my channel, Biology My Passion.